Now we're going to take all of the stuff we know about congruent triangles and we're going to put it together to create a proof. So what is a proof? Well, a pretty definition is that it's an evidence or argument establishing or helping to establish a fact or the truth of a statement. So we're going to use all of these definitions that we know and use it to argue our point across that these triangles or whatever we're looking for is congruent. We're just going to do a two-column proof. So all of our two-column proofs are going to have two columns, and on the left side we're going to have our statements. So what we're saying is happening in our proof, and on the other side we're going to have our reasons or our conclusions. Kind of like a basic outline of your proof, you will always start with your givens, however many givens you have, right? And the reason is because they're your givens, right? Then you're going to have all your definitions and stuff that you're labeling, and then your last part of your proof is going to be whatever you were proving congruent. So we'll call it our congruent statement. That's how you're always going to start and end your proofs. The biggest thing to remember when you do your proof is that you cannot leave anything out. Every little thing you label on your picture needs to be in your proof. So for example, right, I'm given this picture here, ABC, or triangle APQ, and it kind of overlaps triangle PBQ. Alright, so I'm given that angle A is congruent to angle B, and that angle APQ is congruent to angle BQB. My goal is to prove that triangle APQ is congruent to triangle BQP. Alright, so if I start my proof, on this side I'm going to have my statements, on this side I'm going to have my reason, and I'm going to start with my given. So I'm going to say angle A is congruent to angle B, and my reason is because it's a given. And then I'm going to say angle APQ is given or congruent to angle BQP because it's my given. Every single time you're going to start by writing your givens first. Right, so now if I take a second to label those on my picture, right, I've got angle A congruent to angle B, angle APQ, so this whole angle down here, congruent to angle BQP. Now remember, we had to use, we couldn't just say angle P because there's two angles here, or three technically, so we wanted to make sure that we labeled this entire angle. Right, and then just looking at this picture, I can see a third part, right? We need at least those three pieces to be able to figure out if it's congruent or not, and I see that they share this bottom side. Right, that PQ is in both of my triangles. Because it's in both of my triangles, that's a reflexive property, and I can label that the same. So now I have an angle, and a side, and then I have an angle, and a side. So I know that these are congruent by angle, side. But I've got to put everything in my proof. So after I labeled my givens, the next thing I looked at was that bottom side of both triangles, the one that's in both. So I would say PQ is congruent to PQ, is congruent to itself because of the reflexive property. So you've got to have a reason for everything that you label and everything you write in your proof. There has to be a reason. Once I labeled that, it was easy to see that these triangles are congruent. So that's all I need in my proof except for kind of like my final remark, my final statement, and that's going to be my whatever it's asking me to prove. So I'm going to say triangle APQ is congruent to triangle BQP, and we said because of angle, side. And that's it. That's all we have to do in a proof. Everything we label and do to this picture has to be in our proof.